How'd you get into what you're doing right now?
Uh, well, I read a book and I listened to an album. It was On Poetics by Aristotle, and I listened to Bill Hicks's Dangerous. Um, and it's weird because like those two things like don't really seem like they would be that alike, but um, Aristotle like talked about comedians. It comes from the Greek word komadras, which means a person who is reveled from town to town. So it's like an outsider, and like reveled meaning like they're hated by people. So like Aristotle had this idea. This is crazy, dude, because we're talking like ancient Greece. Like Aristotle had this like definition of these people that were just like outsiders that just went from town to town, and then you listen to Bill Hicks and you find out his like the way his life and how he was basically that. Him and Doug Stanhope, they kind of like embody, if you ask me, Aristotle's definition of the comedian.
So it's like a comedian outsider.
I would say, in theory, they have to be. Like, um, truthfully, I would probably extend that definition to like any creative person. Like, I have this belief that like creative people have to be like an island. They have to be away from everything. They have to just separate themselves in order to be able to like commentate on the world in a meaningful way. Um, a lot of my like, it's weird, dude. I don't really have like comedians that I look up to because I didn't I never really wanted to be a comedian is a thing. I really wanted to be a philosopher more than anything. I wanted to be a philosopher. That was kind of my obsession when I was a kid. Um, but a lot of the people that I like, especially like Nietzsche and stuff, they live this life where they like critique the fuck out of the society that they lived in at the time, and they were always on the outside. There's a handful of like people like Camus, for example, who and Dostoevsky too. He was like they were ingrained in their societies, but Camus he was like Camus was like a philosophical fuckboy, basically, because he went around and just fucked people and like smoked cigarettes and partied and stuff. He had this like I have a cup that says um, should I have another cup of coffee or kill myself? Yeah.
What do you think is the? Because you talk about you have to be an outsider.
Yeah.
I think certain creative people, when they have too much wealth, they become outsiders because there's so much of a disconnect. So where do you think that balance is between being creative so it can relate, and being creative where it's just like nobody gets what the hell you're talking about?
It's kind of a psychological and philosophical question. Um, what is the boundary? I know what you're talking about. It's one of those things, man. Like, if you figure that creativity is solving a problem, that's what evolutionarily creativity is. Is like there's a problem and you have to solve it. That's what it was before people were making art and stuff. They were figuring out new, innovative ways to solve problems, and that's what I think like comedy really is. If you get a setup and you have to, it's a problem. You look at it from that way, and then you have to do something that surprises people, and that's what the punchline is. So I think like in terms of wealth, I think that what happens is people just they get they lose that part of themselves that was like able to think about these things because it's no longer a problem for you, right? Like the problem, like how do I make a living doing this? And then once you have it, and then not to mention you're now a millionaire and stuff, it's like that problem goes, it's not there anymore. Now you're doing it purely for the love of the art, and in my opinion I think people like tend to take a nosedive once they get successful, not just in comedy but I mean like in the arts in general. So what do I think the balance is, man? It's like you never want to be too creative to where no one knows what the hell you're talking about, because that's a real problem, because then it's like, great, you're solving problems that I didn't even know I had, that I don't even see as existing to begin with. But you never want to be so creative that that no one knows what the fuck you're talking about. But I guess the flip side of that would be you never want to make it to a point where it's like people can't relate to you anymore. Like I don't know. I think the peak of an artist's career is right before they take off. You know, like a lot of the musicians that I like, that's when they get killed. You know, it's like right before, like L.A. Capone. L.A. Capone was this rapper from Chicago. He's a Chicago drill rapper. He got killed, and right before he made it. It's pretty fucked up. Someone tweeted that his last words were "No." That's fucked, man.
Just think of the Kool-Aid Man. Oh yeah. Oh no.
Careful, man. 600 is gonna kill you. They're mocking their boy.
What is because you talked about
rest in peace, L.A. Capone.
For people like creative process, it's like solving a problem.
Yeah.
I feel
like I didn't really answer your question.
It's just kind of just taking wherever, but I think it's more like creating a distraction most of the time. Art is, because not everyone is talking about deep stuff when they do stand-up or art. It's mostly just like, I don't want to think about what this politician said or CNN said today. Do you think when you do anything creatively, you're solving a problem, or are you just creating a distraction?
I don't think everyone's creative.
How?
Well, because if creativity is solving a problem, if creativity is something that has like... There's a book, it's called Genius, and in the book, this is probably one of the more unpopular views that I have, but it's like, not everyone's creative, just like not everyone's smart. Some people are dumb. Some people just aren't creative. And like... in this book, what it talks about is that you have to have like a near genius IQ to truly be creative right off the bat. So that's 99% of the world is not creative then. He was a psychologist, and like, this is the kind of psychology I like. But I don't think creativity is necessary for a career in the arts, obviously, because people are like landscape painters. You know what I mean? And you can have a good career just painting landscapes and shit. No one gives a fuck. Or like, painting houses and stuff. Like, it's not necessary.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that creativity is I don't think everyone's creative, but I also don't think you need to be creative in order to make a living in the arts, because it's like, that doesn't make sense.
Well, is creativity like because I think everyone's creative, but it's just people don't tap into it. It's kind of like a muscle. It's just like, I'm really good at making songs, because you get the rhythms and you get like the kind of the formula for it, but then you don't do it and you miss out. Would you do? I'm just trying to think, because I just think like, even if you're on the spectrum, even if you just do a little bit, say you just doodle, that's still creativity. It may not be to like the grand scheme, because people, when I say like I'm a comic, like there's tiers to comics. Everyone thinks there's 8 tiers, but like, bro, I'm year 2. I'm just trying to get it out. But yeah, it wasn't really a question. I just think like, yeah, there's definitely tiers. Like, there's a spectrum for everything and how much you're into it. It's just like, how much is that's not valid, versus how much is like, no, you're really about it. It's weird. I don't know.
Well, it depends on how you define creativity then, right? Because it's like the psychological the definition of creativity used by psychologists isn't going to be the definition that you and I are going to use like in everyday conversations.
What is your definition?
Solving a problem.
I think well, the root word of creativity is to create. So every time.
Oh, for sure.
So I think as long as if I'm gonna say I'm a creative person, like, what am I making? Like, if I'm a creative person, I'm painting. Like, what am I making from scratch? That's from my mind, and that's when I see how creative someone is. It's like, how much are you making something? Like, how often are you painting? How often are you writing? How often are you building something? It's like, oh, that's creation, so it's creative. So you have creativity. But yeah.
So I don't have a problem with that definition, but it's just the only real issue I guess that I would take with that is like, so why is it then that some people can do like, why is it that some people can come up with certain things? Like, for example, Chief Keef rhymed From the Projects with like, what was it? It was like chicken beef.
No, like, I know what you mean. Like, I've seen like I think it's 2 Chainz, chestnut titty fuck. Like, that's a bar he had. So are you saying like?
I can fuck your mom.
So what are you saying about like? Are you saying like, how valid is it? Like.
Well, I think more like what I'm saying is creativity would be like finding a new way to do things, right? But it also has to be useful. That's the thing.
Well, that's also just like an abstract meaning. It's just like for the way Champion hoodies was like, Champion was like a Walmart brand. Like people was like, we got Champion jerseys at our school before it got popular, and we're like, fuck, we got the off brand. And now Champion, you can go to Paxson and get that shit for $50 because the Kardashians are wearing it. So it's just really like other people's view as how valuable is this, I guess. Is the solution good? Like, what does this person think, and this person's gonna make everyone else think this solution is good.
So, do you think that someone, for example, like, I don't know, like someone, I'm trying to think of something I could do with this that like people might, I don't know, just try to like, yeah, I can use this to like clog a toilet, right?
Yeah.
Right, but do you think that that's creative in the same way that Elon Musk coming up with Tesla and doing all that stuff is creative?
Depends how it's spun. Like, what's the spin on it? You know, what's the situation? You know, like, you don't want snakes to come out of your toilet anymore? Put a can of iced tea in there. It's not gonna come out anymore. I think it's just kind of how it's valuing. It's kind of like in sports.
But that doesn't really solve the problem. That's the thing. Like Tesla solves the problem. It creates with Tesla's with its electric cars. It's like it's and that's kind of Elon Musk's goal right now is to just solve a lot of problems, as many as he can, right? But even if you were to stick a can of green tea into the toilet because you have snakes coming out of it or something, it's like that doesn't really solve the problem with the snakes. They can just come out a different way.
Well, I think there's the main problem like in entertainment is like the problem isn't you may hear these garbage rhymes, chestnut, titty fuck. They're not solving a problem, but they're solving a problem for someone's boredom. So that's like
I agree.
Yeah.
I 100% agree. But that's what I mean, where it's like, when you're... Here's kind of like a weird place, though, because it's like, if you're a comedian, your job isn't to spout philosophical ideas and change people's minds about like...
Hate that shit.
Like, it's not your fucking job to do that. Your job as a comic is to make people laugh a lot. Right? So, laugh hard a lot. That's what your job is. Mm-hmm. But when you look at it from like that angle, it's like, especially when you consider my definition of it, it makes it sound like a fucking douchebag artist, right?
I think it just makes it sound like you're invalidating a lot of people that are kind of in the arts, because the reason people love it so much is because there's no right or wrong. That's why like painting's a good thing that at least I picked up, is because like this isn't right, this isn't wrong. That's why I told you like cartoons, it's just like there is no definitive thing I'm comparing this to. It's its own thing.
But it's like, the thing is, even within the arts, which is like a subjective field where it's about the individual, there's still some objectivity there. There's still a structure there, right? Because it's like if you want to paint an impressionist painting, there's certain things that impressionists do to make their paintings look the way that they do. Mm-hmm. Same thing with like realism. There is this structure, so like there is a right and wrong way to create paintings in a particular style, right? But I would agree, like if you're just bullshitting and doodling, it's like, yeah, there is no right or wrong. You know, the weird thing is though, I don't understand how people, but this is what we were talking about earlier, where I'm saying that like a painter at its absolute best teaches people a new way to see the world. That's what I mean with Impressionism, because the Impressionists, when they came out, they were like, everybody hated them. They were like burning buildings and like rioting outside of the places where they had like their showings. So they're like, that's not art. Mm-hmm. And you know, that's how douchebag artists are. You know, it's like, that's not art. Get the fuck out of here. It's kind of what the fuck I was doing, really. But
you're not vegan. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. You're a vegetarian, you pussy. No, I do think that there is an objectivity in every single subjective thing, and by objectivity I mean like there are absolutes in everything. Like there are structures, there are things that you have to adhere to in order to be a part of a particular style, and you know, I have the view that like ideas are what make a person more than anything. People become possessed by ideas. Excuse me, and because they become possessed by ideas, like, they can't help but go into stuff. They can't help but become a part of like something bigger than them. Like Some people, if you were to get 50 people, right, and you were to tell them to like practice art for 10 years and they would actually do it, I think that you would see themselves sort into like different fields. Like you would see some people who naturally just go into cubism, some people go into impressionism, some people go into realism, and a bunch of other different art forms, right? Like I think some people would do that. But there is certain criteria for a thing to be considered a painting of or whatever in this particular style. You know, it's the same thing with comedy. Like there's like telling a joke, if you want to write a dark joke, like there's certain elements that dark humor or black humor talks about that, like, you know,
Abortion.
yeah, exactly, yeah, you know, like abortion, it as opposed to like blue comedy, you know, it's just a bunch of like sex stuff, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So
what would you? Because for that wide, I feel like the space for non-titled is way bigger than the space for like ABC genres and stuff like that. I guess I could see your point of it. If you're trying to say it's this, then it needs to at least meet one of these things or something.
The funny thing about creative people though is that even if you were to really get them down to where it's like you're not creative, you're doing this, they would find a way to break that mold, because that's what creative people do. They can't function in I guess the society that we have, which raises people to work in factories, dude. Like 100%, our school system is hardwired to make people work in factories, make people work, not be themselves. It doesn't. Our school system doesn't create individuals. It creates like copies, I guess. It feels weird to say it that way, but I mean that's really the way that it seems to me.
Say if you were to have a kid, is there, to avoid certain things, is there something you want to make sure like they do to make sure they're stuck in? Because I know most schools, like for me for example, they try to force me to be right-handed when I'm left-handed, just to make my life easier. But what would you do to make sure like your kid's not getting turned into like a square?
Homeschool that bitch. No, fuck no, I wouldn't do that. I don't want my kid to be socially awkward and weird, and tuck his shirt into his pants and wear a belt like I did for.
I feel like that's stereotype, because the only people that's mean like. Not that it's bad. I think that's like Mormons and shit, are people that are like kind of like, just kind of that weird awkward white family that does it. But most of the time I meet homeschool people and they're kind of just like, I was able to go my own pace. I did this a lot better. They still did sports and stuff, so I don't think it makes you awkward. Maybe it's just you don't have like a solid group of friends that you would grow up like K through 12.
Oh, Jeff, I was making what's called a fucking joke.
Oh, no jokes.
No, it's okay. No, man. I mean, I'm on board with you on that. One of my friends, she homeschools her kids, and they're a good group of boys. Like, you know, I don't know. I mean, if I really had to do something to my kid to make him to where he doesn't like.
The only reason I said that and I explained it is because I've heard that argument like from like 4 different people. Yeah. So it's just like, it's not like, I was just more thinking like people actually think that a lot. They think, you know, once I do like I homeschool my kid, they're gonna turn into some guy that lives Lord of the Rings in their bedroom every night.
I think your kids I don't have kids, so I'm kind of talking out of my ass. I don't know shit about this, but you know, talking to my cousin Zach, he and I had a similar thing where it's like we kind of showed our parents what we had an interest in. For Zach, my cousin Zach's an artist. He likes sculpting and painting, and if you ask me, dude, my cousin Zach's a creative genius, but he's crazy. Anyway, but like, you know, your kids will show you the stuff that they like. It's like they want to do, if they want to paint or do whatever. You know, I think like the only way to really do that is to encourage them as much as you can. You know, like for me, I liked writing a lot when I was a kid. I was super into the Bible for a long time. I was super diehard religious. When a lot of people watching this, they know me from when I was, or who are gonna watch this, I guess. They all know me from like when I was doing my religious like show. And
do you think that takes away from creativity?
I don't know, but I will get back to this. But when I was a kid, what I used to do is reenact stories from the Bible with my action figures and like toys and stuff. Yeah.
It's dork.
I know. I was a fucking loser. I didn't have a TV, dude. Like I wasn't allowed to play with Yu-Gi-Oh cards and Pokemons. I wasn't allowed to.
Probably looked in the toaster to see when the bread turned brown.
I did, yeah. And you know why I still do that shit?
No, the only reason I ask if it caps your creativity because I feel like for me personally, when I was trying to like kind of be maybe like more like religious and Christian, it kind of like made me feel like not to do or not to be as expressive. I had a friend that was he played the piano and they didn't let him play at the church because he played too liberal. So
was he playing jazz or something?
He's like, that's what I'm saying.
He's just sitting there like
beat
playing,
boop, beat boop.
Yeah, he's playing polytonal music and shit, and these guys are like, no, it's 1-5-6-4 progression.
Yeah, so we don't agree with the color magenta here.
No, we only use red, yellow, and blue, bitch.
Primary.
But like I think if I like, did it stifle my creativity? It's hard to say because I'm pretty disagreeable as it is. Like I don't do well with people telling me what to do, and especially if I don't respect them. So for me, well, all I really did was when I was religious is like I would make people justify why they think I should behave a certain way. Because if you read the Bible, dude, like you have examples like Paul the Apostle is someone that I call like an off-the-wall Christian, because Paul the Apostle, I don't know if you knew this, Paul the Apostle got Stephen. Stephen was a Christian who was preaching, and Saul of Tarsus was his name. He got Stephen crucified, and then and then Saul, when he was on his way to Damascus to go and kill more Christians, that's when he saw Jesus, and that's when he converted. That's when he had his whole thing in Acts 16, I think. Like, I would say with religion, I don't think that it necessarily stifled my creativity. It just made me utilize it in a different way. Mm-hmm. Because that's when I got into philosophy and stuff.
Okay. So what is like do you think your perspective on philosophy changes as you grow older, or is it kind of
like, for sure.
Is there like a small example that you use, or kind of like how like my philosophy was trash back in March of 2018?
Yeah, man. I mean, so in March of 2018, let's see, I was in rehab. My views then, I didn't really get a chance to develop. I don't think that people really develop a coherent philosophical system until they're at least 40. But my views on it were like, now they're more analytical in the sense where it's like, I think that things are broken down into, they have to be broken down and examined individually, right? Whereas this is called analytical philosophy compared to continental, which is more like called a human philosophy. So it's like dealing with the human experience. People like Nietzsche and Cioran, Camus, those guys are good. But like, I have the view that the human experience is more important than anything else, right? That's what my personal view on it is. So the term would be, I guess I'm somewhat of a phenomenologist, mm-hmm. because I think that the individual experience is far more important than, I think human consciousness is more than just a field of academic inquiry.
Can you explain phenomenologist?
Yeah. Well, I kind of just did.
Oh, you did? I wasn't sure.
But it's okay. I can elaborate. So it's like the human experience. So phenomenology is used primarily by psychologists, and it's going to make sense here because it's like the world is stimuli, right? And how I react to it makes up what the world is. That's basically like, and what each individual structure of my experience is, what it means to me. Examining that is phenomenology. So it's kind of like literary analysis, like when you study themes in a book in English class and stuff, applying that to your normal life, that's phenomenology.
Okay. So,
and I think that takes importance over everything. I used to be the other way. I used to be like, hard analytical, where it's like what we experience doesn't matter at all because there's an objective world that is studied and analyzed, and that's more important than how we interpret the information. But now that's changed. I think how we interpret things is more important than how things are objectively.
How we interpret things are more important than how we view them objectively. I like that. No, yeah, just think about it. But other than that, is there anything you want to top off? I like that this has just been like philosophy and shit, but
You know, when you ask me like to introduce myself and say like, you know, like what do I like, man? I mean, that's it for me. It's like I have my philosophy of reading is like, dude, in my jokes I have so many jokes about reading because that's all I fucking do. You know, like I quit my job and then I got a whole bunch of money and I quit my job and now it's like that's all I fucking do is I sit, I write, and I read and that's it. You know, and so, you know, I feel weird to say it, but I mean like the reason I talk about it so much is because that's all I know.
is there? Because I know prior you talked about you want to do short films. Is there anything? Are you gonna take like, of course, philosophical themes and integrate that, or is it just kind of just write what you think about?
Yeah. You know, I was saying earlier about how I think that people are made up. They're made up of ideas, and how our ideas are what we interpret, or how our ideas are what make up how our reactions to the outside world. I think all art, all good, like I shouldn't say art, but all movies and films and stuff like that. That's what they do. Like Breaking Bad, if you look at it philosophically, it's an incredibly interesting movie because you're talking about like the slow progression of like a caged man into what he's become because he's been in cage for so long. That's not the life Walter White wanted, but it was better. Like, but being Eisenhower, what the
Heisenberg, yeah,
there you go,
Heisenberg.
Eisenhower. But being Heisenberg was who he became because he wasn't allowed to be who he was. He didn't want to be. Walter White was this like weak chemistry teacher that got bullied by his students, and then Heisenberg was a fucking savage. You know, it's like it's so. I think that all of my stuff, all of my little short stories that I write. I mean, you know, I post that stuff on the internet a lot, but all of my short stories, they all do that. They all like, I have characters that follow plot lines and stuff, but it's like if you look at them philosophically, they're ideas more than they're people, because that's how I see them. You know, I see you as like a culmination of ideas rather than like, you know, anything else, which is weird to say. But so to answer your question, yes.
I like it. Well, appreciate you coming in. We'll definitely do a part 2. Carry this on maybe sometime in the future if you don't get deported.
Or like if I don't get killed or sent to prison.
Al Capone. No, appreciate you. Yeah, appreciate it. Have a great day.
All right. Well, rest in peace, King Von. Rest in peace, L.A. Capone. Rest in peace, T. Roy.